Clear prop.
Star 73, Yankee number 2, following twin traffic, 3 mile final, clear Pleasantville. 1 Charlie Bravo, exit in runway 25, going 4 mile final.
This is Behind the Prop with United Flight Systems owner and licensed pilot Bobby Doss and his co-host, Major Airline Captain and designated pilot examiner Wally Mulhern. Now let's go Behind the Prop.
What's up, Wally?
Hey, Bobby, how are you?
I'm great. This is our third guest, and we are excited to have her on the show. Today with us is a past flight instructor from United Flight Systems, a current Southwest Airlines first officer, and someone with a very interesting aviation story that we're going to talk about today. Today we have on the show Jessica Garcia. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I know we're going to talk a lot about you today, but you also happen to be married to a pilot as well.
I am. My wonderful husband, Ricky, who also instructed here.
He did instruct here. And I heard good news for Ricky recently. Is that true?
He got hired at Commute Air Airlines Friday.
That is
so
awesome.
Very excited.
And so he was an express jet. And if anybody lives in Houston and listens to this show, they probably have heard about all the things that happened at Express Jet. So it's great to hear that Ricky's back in the cockpit doing great things for aviation.
He's really excited. I'm pumped for him. He's ready to get back in the airplane.
So we have a lot to talk about today, but as the current owner of United Flight Systems, it's always a great time when a previous flight instructor comes back and shares with me stories and things from the past. You've obviously spent many an hour behind a prop as an airplane owner still today. You spent a lot of time behind the prop, but any idea how many hours of dual you gave here at this flight school?
Ooh, it's got to be at least 1,200. I remember one day sitting down with my logbook in between students, and I recognized that my total dual received and total dual given was equal. So I surpassed that milestone here. And then I want to say I had about 1,200 hours instructing here.
Nice. And that was that in the day where you could just get to 1,500 and go right to the airline? Sort
of. I was in the weird transition area where the ATP was being required by the regional airlines to get hired, but you didn't have to do the ATP CTP course. So I ended up being able to do my ATP on my own without having to do the course, but you still had to have the 1,500 hours. So kind of an awkward phase. I think I got my ATP in June and the law passed in August for the ATP CTP.
So I guess for our listeners, we've obviously prepped and talked a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your aviation career, where you went to college, how you found this place, and then did you go right to the airlines, or what really happened there?
So I started flying recreationally in Abilene, Texas, where I'm from, just doing it for fun. I grew up flying with my dad in the right seat of various aircraft, 182s, Bonanzas, Barons. And the end of my freshman year of college, he said, okay, you can go to summer school, you can get a job, or you can get your pilot's license. And so I opted to go get my pilot's license, obviously, and had a wonderful instructor who is now she is my best friend. We are incredibly close. She flies for FedEx, and she said, you're kind of good at this. Have you considered doing it as a career? And up until that point, I hadn't been exposed to the opportunities and careers in aviation. So she took me to my first Women in Aviation conference, and it was like being around thousands of my Type A best friends. And they all took me by the hand. I was 19 years old and said, we're going to show you what it means to be a professional pilot. And I decided right then and there that was going to be my career. Up until then, I was studying marketing and liked it, but didn't love it. So went back to Abilene, finished my instrument rating. Then I transferred to Louisiana Tech University, where I finished my commercial CFI, CFII, MEI, instructed for the school for a few months, loved being at Tech. I'm a very proud Louisiana Tech Bulldog. And but it wasn't building flight time quite quick enough. And so a friend of mine called me and said, there's a flight school in Houston I think you'd be a great fit at. Would you consider interviewing? So I called United Flight Systems, talked to the previous owner, Bob Watts, and his daughter, Laura, and they brought us in for an interview, me and my husband. I secretly brought my husband along with me to interview as well, and they hired us right then and there. And so within a month, I moved to Houston and began instructing here. Instructed for, I guess it would have been about 2.5 years, and then had one of my coworkers, a fellow instructor here, come into my office and say, would you like to fly corporate? And I'd always been really interested in corporate aviation. I grew up around general aviation, being there in Abilene. We had a little bit of regional airline flying, but not a lot. So I had more exposure to corporate. And I said, sure. I didn't know what the airplane was. I'd never heard of it. It was a Cessna Conquest, a twin-engine turboprop. And met with the woman who was flying that airplane. And we went and just had dinner and chit-chatted. And she said, I think you'd be a great fit. Would you come fly with me? So that was my introduction to Part 135. Flew for them for a couple of years, loved it. I flew for a family. They're still dear and special in my life. The woman I flew with is still very dear to me. We get together as often as we can, being two pilots. And so that kind of started me on a different trajectory. It was, like I said, the 1,500 hours was required. At the time, Ricky got to his 1,500 faster than I did. We were newly married. And the regional airline pay was such that we both couldn't necessarily go to the regional airlines and pay our bills. So corporate gave me a little bit of a chance to do what I wanted to do, but also make a little bit more money. And so he continued on with ExpressJet, and I went the path of corporate. Flew everything from Hawker 4000 to Barons to Conquest, Citations. Ended up, my last job, I flew a Lear 75, which is still one of my favorite airplanes to this day. And loved corporate, but knew I needed some stability and knew I needed some balance in my life in terms of we were wanting to have a family, and the schedule was just getting to be a little bit much for me. And so I just threw my application in at Southwest and very quickly, very fortunately got an interview and have been there for just over a year and a half now.
Wow. And so that's pre-pandemic. And,
Yeah.
Are you flying very much right now, or is it a little bit less than it was early on?
Less than it was early on. When I started, I was based out in Oakland, and I was fairly junior, but was still flying a lot. Got based in Houston in February of this year. Wow, what has happened to this year? I don't even know what day it is. And when I got based here in Houston, I went on reserve and didn't fly very much, particularly once March came around. We know what all happened there. So not flying as much here lately.
So you brought up the women in aviation. Wally, you have a couple of daughters that are aviators in some form or another. I assume they're members of Women of Aviation here in Houston?
Yeah, and they enjoy going to the national conferences. And my oldest daughter, especially, my youngest daughter, is got 1 month left in college up in Monroe, Louisiana, University of Louisiana Monroe, who we were supposed to play Louisiana Tech in football this Saturday, and we had our tickets, but thanks to this COVID thing, we're not going to do that.
Bummer.
But anyway, that's a different show idea. But yeah, so hopefully my younger daughter will get involved in it as well. But,
and we haven't missed it yet, but you are actually now the president of the local chapter of the Women in Aviation Houston.
Co-president. Yeah, I share it with Candy Wyndham, who is fabulous.
Nice. And so before we jump into another thing, let's talk a little bit about Women in Aviation. I've been aware of the group since I took over the flight school. I think we met briefly early on and talked, and I've tried to open our doors and make it the classroom and things available. But honestly, I don't really know what the goals other than introducing women to aviation are. Tell the listeners a little bit about Women in Aviation, and if they are so inclined, what could they do to participate or actually get involved?
So one of my favorite subjects, I'm so passionate about women in aviation. I attribute so many milestones in my career to that organization. The goal of Women in Aviation is to further aviation careers, not just for women, but for men as well, but to further careers for women in aviation in all aspects. Doesn't matter if you're a pilot, an air traffic controller, management, we have engineers, we have FBO operators, owners. It's every aspect that you can think of that aviation touches. And the goal is just to network, to provide resources, to provide scholarships, to provide community for women in the aviation industry. So here in the local Houston area, we have about 200 people that are involved. At any given time, we have 40 to 50 that are active. We do quarterly meetings, and it gives us a chance to talk about what events we want to host in the Houston area, what events we want to be a part of that are already taking place, be it Wings Over Houston or any other type of fundraising event. We do provide scholarships on the local level as well as the international level. They have given out, when I say millions, I mean millions and millions of dollars of scholarships. And so it's a chance for, on the local Houston level, for us to get to know our local group and network. Just this last meeting, we had one of our members say, hey, I know of a couple of jobs that are available. Who can I talk to that may be interested in them? Another one works for a app company here locally, and she said, I may be able to help some people find jobs. So it's beyond just the international organization. On the local level, it's all about community, and it's a chance for us to know each other. You know, we're kind of a small but mighty group. I don't know the exact statistics for other demographics in aviation, but for female pilots, it's only about 6%. And so we're trying to raise that number, be it through good networking, be it through encouraging young girls to pursue careers in aviation. It's a chance for us to reach them directly.
For me, when I first got into aviation, it's to me, it's weird. I didn't know how to even get started, right? Most would assume, and we've all kind of been around this for a while, that you would just go to a flight school and start flying. I mean, that makes sense to us now. But I can remember there was this level of anxiety of not wanting to even come in here. I had a friend who said, go meet Bob at United Flight Systems. He'll help you. And I probably drove past the entrance here multiple times because there was this level of anxiety. What am I going to go in and ask about? And I remember walking in and saying, I'd like to learn how to fly. And there was somebody at the front who said, well, you came to the right place. And I already felt like I was defeated a little bit. Like, well, I know, but that's not how I wanted you to talk. So what kind of people should come to your events, I guess, is what I'm building up to. I bet there's a lot of people out there that maybe listen to this podcast that say, well, I'd like to go to a Women in Aviation event, but I don't want to be the odd woman out. I don't want to be someone who doesn't know what to talk about.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because we had this last meeting that we just hosted, I would say more than half of our people that came to the meeting were new members that had never been before. And taking that first step is really difficult, no matter what you're stepping into, be it the flight school or the chapter of an organization. It's intimidating. And I am the first to admit that. Even for me now, having experienced so many things that I have in the industry, it's still scary to walk up to somebody new and introduce myself.
Well, someone who's never even taken a flight lesson is going to come to you, a first officer at Southwest. Like, that's unfathomable to someone who has never flown a plane before. Well,
fortunately, I'm not sitting there in my uniform, so hopefully I don't look too intimidating. And I don't think I look intimidating in my uniform anyway. So, but no, it's hard, but I can't encourage anybody more to say, just do it. Just don't be afraid. Just walk in and say hello. We had one woman, bless her heart, she was all the way down on the south side of town. She had an appointment. She wasn't able to make the meeting, but she drove up here just to say hi after the meeting was over. We were all standing around talking. And it was awesome that she had the courage, which I get it, not everybody feels comfortable doing that, but just do it. She had the courage to come up and say, I just wanted to come meet you and say hi and see what this is all about. But if you're too nervous to come to a meeting, come up to us at one of the other events that we're at. We are at events all the time, all around town, be it through Lone Star College system. We've done lots of the recruiting events at different airlines. We always try to have a table set up wherever we are. Come say hi, come grab us, come say, I'm so-and-so, I'm a little bit interested in the organization, but I don't even know where to start. Find a friendly face or bring a friend. Even if it's somebody who's not in aviation, bring a friend, because we are excited to meet everybody. And it gives that, if that's a little bit of a security blanket for you, then come do it. But it's worth it. That's the biggest thing I want to express, is that it is so worth it. No matter if you're getting involved in Women in Aviation or EAA or Young Eagles or any of the other organizations, it's worth it to get plugged in and build your own community and build your own tribe as you're starting your aviation journey. Because it's a little bit lonely when you're getting started. It's you and maybe your instructor. And if you're at a big flight school, then you may have more connection, more interaction. But it can be really, really lonely, especially if you don't have a friend or a spouse or somebody that flies as well. So just do it.
Bobby, you bring up an excellent point. You're talking about walking into a flight school, and it's almost as if we're going off script a little bit. But as an examiner, I get to sit in the corner a lot at flight schools, and I watch people walk in the front door, and I cringe at some of the things I hear being told to these potential customers, because I think most people that work the front desk of these flight schools, most of the time we refer to them as dispatchers. They're very skilled in how to give the keys to the Cessna 172 to a new student and maybe look at the wind and see if they're okay to go fly this airplane solo and that kind of stuff. But I don't think a lot of the dispatchers are trained very well in salesmanship, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but people, just the fact that they're walking in the door says they've got an interest. So I think our flight schools could do a better job in promoting aviation and selling the idea to people.
No doubt, and just getting them excited. I think we had Devin Miller on the show recently. I talk about the Devin Miller effect all the time. A guy who walked in and said, "I want to fly," who's spent a small fortune here, bought 3 planes. We've been partners on leasebacks. And if he would have been not sold to or been mismanaged in any way, where might he be?
Right.
How many Devin Miller effects are that we don't know about or remember that were bad, right?
Right.
And that just makes me vomit a little bit. I get nervous to think how many times are we losing a great customer like Devin because of that. And I would think an organization like yours, you feel the same way. You don't want to miss out on any opportunity to introduce a woman to aviation. You mentioned membership. Is there a membership that they have to join before they come to an event? How do they find events? How would you suggest a woman or man that wants to help women in aviation, how would they get involved?
To join Women in Aviation International, WAI.org, Women in Aviation International.org. And membership, it's around $45 for a full membership. They have some student memberships discounted as well. And I encourage everybody to be sure you join the international organization. It will pay out in dividends. You have access to all the scholarships. You have access to the conference. You have access to, they send you a magazine that is filled with inspirational articles and good information. On the local level, you can visit waihouston.org, and that website has information about our upcoming meetings, events that we may be a part of, how to apply. But I encourage anybody who's even slightly interested, don't join just yet. Come meet us, come sit through a meeting, come introduce yourself. And then if you say, yep, this is my tribe, this is where I want to be, which we hope you are, then we'll talk about membership. It's $20 for a full membership, $10 for student membership. But also, don't let that deter you. If that's something that you can't pocket right now, come talk to me. I'll either pay your membership or I'll waive the fee. I want you to be involved. I want you to find your tribe in with us. So I really encourage anybody that's interested, or you can email me, get in contact with me. Let's talk about it. We also have a Facebook group, Women in Aviation Houston chapter. There's a couple of questions on there. That's just to be sure that our group is nice and secure for everybody's safety. Feel free to join there as well to get information about upcoming meetings.
Awesome. So you've been involved in the group for a long time, obviously. What do you find most valuable about the Women in Aviation group?
My people. I love to fly. I love airplanes. I love airports. But aviation to me is all about people, and it's all about the interactions that I get to have. I have met some of the most outstanding people through Women in Aviation. My best friends in the Houston area are through my Women in Aviation chapter. And that's not just a coincidence. You know, you get a lot of like-minded individuals in one place, you're going to bond. A lot of us are around the same age, but there are a lot of us that are not around the same age. I've got friends that are 20. I've got friends that are 60 and older that are involved in the chapter. So for me, the value is that, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention the scholarships. I've been fortunate to be a recipient of several of the scholarships through the organization, and I can 100% without any doubt in my mind say that I owe my job today to a Women in Aviation scholarship. Wow. I've received type ratings through them. I've received financial aid through them, and then was fortunate to meet the right people through Southwest through Women in Aviation scholarships as well.
Wow, that's big. You also told me before we started recording that the annual conferences were a big deal to you. Tell me a little bit about the annual conference.
I love the annual conference. It's typically in March every year. It rotates location. They're running out of places that we fit because it's gotten so big every year. This year upcoming is going to be in Reno, Nevada, which I love the Reno conference. It's so much fun. And it's a chance we have seminars, we have guest speakers, there's booths with all of the major players in the industry and some of the minor ones that set up booths in areas that you can walk around and introduce yourself and meet people. Probably the neatest thing, though, is some of the guest speakers and some of the seminars that you can go to. I went to one that was all about imposter syndrome and how to overcome that. I've been to WASP seminars where the women Air Force service pilots, who were the first female Air Force pilots allowed into the military to fly, they've all gotten up to speak. And you want to talk about inspirational and motivational. When you hear their story, that's all you need to say, okay, I'm ready, let's go fly. We've had engineers from NASA. There was one year, several years ago, that this woman was talking about one of the Mars rovers. She was one of the lead engineers on the Mars rover. There was not a dry eye in the audience. Now, how this woman could make an inanimate object so lifelike and so meaningful to an audience, and it wasn't just women who were crying, so let's not play that was the emotional card. Everybody was tearing up. And it was coincidental that the rover was landing 2 days later. I guarantee every single person that was sitting in that room watched that Mars rover landing. It meant so much to us. So just exposure to things that you wouldn't be exposed to otherwise. That's how I got my exposure to corporate aviation. I met a woman who owned an FBO and a fleet of aircraft. And I said, that sounds like fun. That sounds like something that I would like to do. And it's also a chance we kick off our shoes, we go have a drink at the end of the day and sit down and meet people that we wouldn't have met otherwise. So especially in aviation, you can be so disconnected because you're based in different places, you live in different cities. It's a chance for us all to come together and reconnect and make new connections and new networks.
Awesome. So if you're listening, go learn more about women in aviation, come to an event, meet Jessica, get to know the whole group. And as she said, find your tribe for sure in the women in aviation. So the one unique thing, we've talked a lot about it, there's something unique about your aviation career that not all of us get to participate in. Tell us a little bit, so I don't spoil it, I guess. Tell us a little bit about what is unique about Jessica and your story around aviation.
So probably one of the most unique things about me is that I'm blind in one eye. And it happened to me when I was 16. I had a disease called acanthamoeba keratitis. That is an amoeba you learn about in biology, got in my eye, and it required some pretty strong eye drops and medications to kill it. But it resulted in the fact that my cornea is damaged with no chance of being able to wear a contact lens or anything. And so I have what's called a Statement of Demonstrated Ability, a SODA, which the FAA granted me to say that I am legal to hold a first-class medical to fly commercially.
That is pretty unique. So I think I learned about a SODA fairly recently when I've been working on getting my instructor license. It's slow going, so it might still be taking time for me to get my instructor license. But not too many people know that there's these ways that you can get a special medical. I would say I would have thought up until a few months ago that I had to have perfect vision to be a pilot, right? Don't you have to have perfect vision to be a pilot?
That's kind of one of the fallacies of the aviation industry, and I think it's a carryover from the military. I think that the military requirements are much stricter, and there were so many years that most professional pilots came from military backgrounds. But there are so many different things that you can get a SODA for. And for me, it was a no-brainer that I wanted to fly. It was a question of could I get a medical, and it was a question of could I find the right person to help me through that process and what that meant, especially being in small town West Texas. We didn't have a lot of AMEs and didn't have a lot of resources. In fact, I had a lot of AME, Airman Medical Examiner. I had a lot that turned me away. And I think it was just because they didn't know I never was denied for a medical. I would call and explain my situation. And Wally, you mentioned the people at the front desk, the dispatchers. I had a lot of people at the front desk of the doctor's offices say, we don't do that, or no, you can't get a medical. I think they just weren't informed and didn't know, which is not their fault. But yeah, it was just finding the right person to help me obtain that statement of demonstrated ability that made the difference for me.
Yeah. So you have obviously these phone calls to these medical offices, and they turn you away. What was the group like that said that they would help you? What was different, or what made the difference for you?
So going back to Find Your Tribe, there was a local pilot who's one of my dad's best friends, who my dad explained the situation, and he said, "Oh, I've got an AME that will that should be able to help her." And so I had to travel a little bit. He was in Brownwood. And I went in, and at that point I was just flying recreationally. I had no intention of flying professionally. I was just going for my third class medical because I thought this is just going to be a weekend activity for me. And so made the call. He said, "Yep, I'll see you. Let's see what we can do." Went in for the exam. I was 19. I was in really pretty good shape at that point. It came to the eye test, and obviously I failed the eye test because I can't pass it because of my vision. Right. And so at that point, what he did was put in an order for the FAA to look at my file. And unfortunately, I don't know exactly what steps the AME takes. That's a great question for your local AME. But he put in the request for the SOTA to be done. And thankfully, one thing he did for me that was a bonus is he said, "I'm going to go ahead and test you for a second class just to cover all of our bases." So without me even really knowing at that point, and back then the computer software was different for obtaining an aviation medical, he went ahead and did it up to a second class. So it went to the local FSDO, which was Lubbock, and the FSDO got in contact with me, and we set up a flight test. And I went up with a fantastic FAA representative. It was a great first exposure to working with the local FSDO. And so we went up into the flight test, and it was fairly straightforward. He was asking me questions about identifying objects on the ground, identifying objects in the air. He made sure that I could pick a suitable landing site for an off-field landing if necessary. He had me demonstrate several landings to be sure my depth perception was adequate. And at that point, I was issued my second class SOTA. So later had to upgrade that one to a first class, went through the same avenues again and upgraded to a first class. But once it's done, it's done. As long as there's no change or progression to my vision, I don't have to do the test again. I carry it with my medical. If I am requested to present my medical, I go ahead and present it at the same time. Once it's done, it's fairly straightforward. It's pretty easy. And most people don't even know that I'm blind in one eye. I'm happy to talk about it. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm happy to, and I love helping other people that think that it may be something that inhibits them from flying. I love telling them that it's not.
That's awesome. And a question just popped into my head, which is, okay, we all go back and get our medicals at whatever interval we have to get our medicals. You said once it's done, it's done. Surely you still go get some sort of a medical checkup.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't mean to misunderstand that one. Yeah. I still go for my first class medical every year. I have to keep a first class for my job. But when I go for my medical, especially if I'm going to a new AME, I present my SOTA and explain to them that I will most likely not be able to pass the eye exam. And so at that point, they do the eye exam up to the point that I can pass it. And then that's it. I don't know what they do on their end that shows it, but I walk away with my first class medical. So yes, still have to do medicals every year, still do the eye test every year. I just explained that I won't be able to pass the left eye vision portion of the test.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense. And I don't have perfect vision. I'm wearing glasses, and I have to wear glasses now while I fly. But if I had LASIK and I could pass that, then that would be solved for me personally. Wally, you've been in aviation for a long time. Any other interesting SOTAs that you've seen or participated around or with? I think for me, it's inspirational for our listeners to just know I might have a problem, but that problem might not prevent me from being a professional pilot.
What I would ask, Jessica, what made you keep going back? In other words, if I went down to the Houston Rockets right now and says I want to try out for your basketball team, and they say, well, you can't jump and you can't run and you can't shoot, I would probably walk away and say, well, okay. I wouldn't come back tomorrow and say, can I try this again? So when the first AME turned you away, obviously you didn't take no. You came back. What inspired that?
I think at any age, but particularly at 19, if somebody told me I couldn't do something, that just made me want to do it that much more. I don't know that there was anything in particular that said I'm just going to keep trying. I just knew that I was going to do it and I was going to keep trying. At that point, I had done my own research and seen that there was regulations that allowed me to hold the soda, so I knew it was possible. But I just didn't let the naysayers discourage me, and I just kept going. I don't know. I had a lot of cheerleaders that said, we know this is possible. We just have to find the right person.
This isn't an aviation story. This is a life story. It just says if you want something, keep going. Don't give up.
No doubt.
Don't give up. I'm not sure the thing with me and the Rockets will work out, but
I see potential.
Keep trying.
Okay.
You look good in their jersey. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
As it relates to what Wally said, the never giving up, do other people that are aware of this think that you have a deficiency? I don't know what the right way to put it is, but do they think that you can't be as good of a pilot? Has anyone ever challenged you in such a way?
No, never. More often than not, like I said, most people don't even know. I would say probably the only thing that triggers people is particularly when I was flight instructing, sitting in the right seat. If a student was flying, I'd have to turn a little bit further over to the left to be able to see what their panel was doing. Thankfully, with experience, and Wally, I'm sure you can attest to this, that I've got now where I can look out the window and know what they're doing. I can feel if they're uncoordinated in my seat. I can feel if the airspeed's getting too slow or too fast. I can hear it. Your senses take over a little bit.
Right.
And I think that's true for instructors who have two good functioning eyes. They do that.
Sure.
But no, I don't think anybody has ever stopped me and said, oh, you shouldn't be doing that or you're not capable of that. I've kind of proven that that's possible.
Sure. Well, and I think before we start recording, I was joking with Wally. I've flown with many a rated pilot who have two good eyes and still don't look out the windows to see things. So I'm not sure that's the most referenceable point there for sure. So congratulations on overcoming something that really isn't the end of the world. And I would tell the listeners, I've talked to people who have had to do things to get over medical milestones in their aviation careers. It is possible. Don't give up. I think we would recommend, we're not doctors, but we would recommend probably contacting the AOPA and their medical hotline to start that process if you don't have friends and family
Absolutely.
that can point you in the right direction. And then do your part to find a good AME that can help you. I don't know that I have some suggestions here locally. If you're in local, give me a call or email me, Bobby@behindtheprop.com, and I'll try and point you to an AME that might be able to help. But start with the AOPA. I would say we would all think don't get denied. That would be the one setback, because once you're denied, that's something that's pretty difficult to overcome. It is possible, but you'll have that little checkbox on your records forever that you have been denied at some point for a medical. So start with the AOPA, then go to an AME and go with that. Anything to wrap with, Wally, as it relates to Jessica? I'm sure this is hopefully part one of more than one part with Jessica. As her career continues to grow.
No, just thank you for being here. And I will say, if we have any listeners out there who have questions for her, if you email Bobby or myself, we can certainly get it to her about sodas or anything like that. But it's something that quite honestly, I'm not very familiar with. So this was a very educational experience for me to hear your story.
Yeah, I'd love to. Anybody that has any questions, I would love to answer them. That it's so special to me to be able to help somebody overcome a medical issue the best I can.
If someone's listening and they want to find you, is the best way to find you come into a Houston Women in Aviation event, probably?
Absolutely.
Right.
Come on.
All right, so with that, we'll wrap up. As always, fly safe and stay behind the prop. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for checking out the Behind the Prop podcast. Be sure to click subscribe and check us out online at BehindTheProp.com. Behind the Prop is recorded in Houston, Texas. Creator and host is Bobby Doss. Co-host is Wally Mulhern. The show is for entertainment purposes only and is not meant to replace actual flight instruction. Thanks for listening, and remember, fly safe.